Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. So this week I want to talk about timing. Timing is everything in Magic the Gathering finance. It's something that's often ignored because if you do not capitalize on specific timing of either buying or selling cards, you're missing out on the greatest opportunity there is in Magic. Now, thankfully, I learned this before I even was a speculator or just a trader in Magic the Gathering. It came from a game called World of Warcraft. So I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I was a WoWer, and in fact, played WoW for a good year before I was one of those plebs that just could not afford a mount and just saw everyone else that was running around with their epic mounts and decided there's got to be a better way than grinding out the money needed for the mount. And so I learned the auction house. And it really, after the first expansion came out, and really the second expansion came out for World of Warcraft, with patch notes, patch days being the greatest opportunities to sell particular things on the auction house. And I just really learned the timing mattered more than anything on the auction house. In fact, if you were to scour the internet for like information on what to do on World of Warcraft, a lot of that was so irrelevant weeks after, or even days after the people were posting these sort of tips and tricks on how to grind gold on WoW. But one thing stayed true, that patch days were huge sell days, so things that could be worthless through the exact entirety of the rest of the game on patch days, it could go up to just insane numbers as people were trying to upgrade their new gear and whatnot. So Magic the Gathering is very similar to that, except for patch days, we have rotation days or just formats that rotate, and even more importantly, we have draft seasons that come in and then come out. And so the supply and demand is going to be very, very dependent on when those cycles happen for particular cards. So that's what I'm going to try to focus on today, is talking about timing. So the first thing I want to talk about is selling. And recently at GP Vegas, I bundled together all the cards that we hadn't sold. I wasn't getting good prices on either Card Kingdom's buy list or anyone else's buy list, or getting good value on even selling on eBay or TCG Player. Couldn't find buyers on Cardsphere, etc., etc. So we took together an entire binder and then basically vended it at GP Vegas to people that could move it better than us. And that's something I do now that GP Vegas has been a constant year after year around June. It might be something that is going to be here to stay year after year. That is my time to get out of the rest of rotating standard, is just to vend them at the GP. Now, Commander's got a very similar time period. I would say right now you should definitely be looking at the cards that you've acquired for Commander, especially been watching my Market Mondays. I've been talking about cards like Sidisi and Cyclonic Rift and those sort of cards that I've been picking up. And I think that now is the time to really start to sell those cards, because we're having the August, it's getting very close to August, 1 month out, of a lot of unknowns. But there does seem to be, just like in World of Warcraft with very predictable patterns with patch days, there seems to be very predictable patterns with Commander. And I'm going to show you one of them right now. So the first thing here is Commander seems to regulate itself for reprints much better than even Modern does. So if a card is utilized a lot here on EDHREC's top cards from their respected colors, it's most likely going to get a reprint in the near future if it hasn't seen a reprint in a short period of time here. So what I usually go here is go over to this top cards. You don't want to do this top cards because it's kind of not relevant, because when you click here over on the top cards, it's going to show you a lot of multicolored cards, because and it's going to be misleading. Like Putrefy doesn't see more play than Demonic Tutor. Demonic Tutor sees a lot more play than Putrefy. As you look, it's in 43,000 decks versus 20,000 decks. So of course, Demonic Tutor is going to have more of the demand than Putrefy. Unfortunately, EDHREC separates this by percentage of decks these go in, and not the overall numbers of decks that they go in. But if you actually go down to color, then that can actually give you a better picture. So if we come over here by color and we look at white, you can see a pattern does emerge in Commander. These cards get reprinted a lot. Swords of Plowshare got a reprint in 25. Path to Exile got a reprint in the Ixalan, Explorers of Ixalan. Sun Titan has been reprinted in whatever box set this was with the Nicol Bolas versus the, what was that? I can't remember. Enlightened Tutor, even though these are starting to haven't had a printing since Eternal Masters, that wasn't that long ago. And you can just keep going down the list. So what I like to say, what I think is a liability at this point in time is anything that's creeping up there in value that hasn't seen a reprint for a while. So the first card that we see, and that you can also use this as a good spec target for cards that you want to purchase after this August Commander set comes out, that any of these that miss reprints, especially if they haven't seen a reprint yet, is a good time to buy into them and then sell before 2019's August. So you can see the most played white cards, these have all had a reprint recently. Yeah, very recently. Land Tax was in Battle Bond, for example. This is a great indicator, a great predictor of cards that are going to be reprinted in the near future. See, Wizards isn't as strict on casual. Casual, they seem to actually even put more value in a lot of these sets. Like, we look at Battle Bond, we look at Conspiracies, we look at even like box sets. Commander 2017 had a lot of value in it, as well as Commander 2016 had just a phenomenal amount of value that was contained in those Commander sets. So I don't think that anything is going to be different from 2018. They're probably going to be having each Commander set having at least $75 to $100 worth of value. I think it was what Commander the Brea Atraxa, there was like $700 worth of cards in the box set. And so they are definitely jamming full of value. And how they jam in the most value here is by putting cards that are highly wanted and have a high price tag. So it wouldn't be surprising that a lot of these cards get another reprint in this upcoming August of 2018. And to me, a lot of these are a liability, especially if they haven't seen a printing in a while. So cards like True Conviction, $5 might be the perfect to put into the box set to sell the set. If we get another white beats type deck, like maybe even my predictions are that we're going to see 4 decks, all allied colors except for Celestia, just because they did Celestia last year. And so we'll see Rakdos, Dimir, whatever, red-green, that's Gruul, there we go. And the other one being, Azorius, as the sets they're going to print. And so maybe if they do, I highly doubt they might go the True Convictions Azorius route, but aside from even speculation of what the box sets are, they're probably going to contain a number of these cards that are heavily played in the Commander format, and that's just a good way to figure out which ones are going to go there. So, however, the ones that are really on my radar that are going to see printing very, very soon is even cards like as not so far back as like Thalia, Heretic, Cathar, as well as the Open the Armory. Now, Open the Armory, if it doesn't get a reprint, to me this is prime spec targets. As yes, Shadows of Shadows open like crazy, but it's about time that these type of cards do start to gain value. And this is what we're going to talk about in part 2 of the rogue market, is cards that I think are ripe to start throwing money at. And Open the Armory, if you're not worried about this getting a reprint, which I am, that's why I'm not going to throw a lot of money at it, is this card is seen playing in 8,312, and that's quite high for a card that was just recently printed. Like, a lot of these are gaining numbers just because they've existed in decks for a long period of time. Like Swords of Plowshare, of course, it's the beginning of Commander, has been an option, so therefore it's going to be in just an obscene amount of decks, 51% of 60,000, versus you can actually see the percentage of you can actually calculate the numbers of decks that it can go into. Why is this one actually, or no, it's in 59. Now, okay, so it is calculating all the decks it's eligible to be in. I thought that maybe they had lower numbers per set, so my bad there. So anyway, yeah, you can start to see like Heliod is primed for a reprint. Fumigate probably will be reprinted in upcoming Commander sets just because of how popular it is. So it's a card that I don't know if that's the right card even to spec into. Of course, it already had the reprint, and as far as the challenger decks are concerned, any card that's contained in a challenger deck to me is pretty much dead. I don't think it's investable. I think there will be too many copies when the dust settles to really stick any money into it. But cards like Gift of Immortality, this is a card that I would assume is too much of a liability. It's going to be printed very shortly in some sort of box set because Wizards looks at this like crazy, and they tend to get these cards back in circulation. If you don't think so, well, look at the top 30 or so cards. They've all had recent reprints. If we come over to another color, you can see cards that I am actively getting rid of. Of course, using this, I sold out of the Cyclonic Rifts. Actually, I think I buy listed them 2-card Kingdom for like $10.50 a piece, just because that's just too rich for my blood for an upcoming reprint of something that absolutely needs to be reprinted quickly for the Commander players to have their copies before this card goes into obscene prices. So did the same for Ristic Study. I think Ristic Study is about time that it pops, that it gets a reprint. It might just be in one Commander set, and it'll be printed as a common, but that's going to be misleading because it's going to produce the exact amount of supply that even a Mythic in these sort of sets do provide. So Ristic Study are too rich for my blood to hold on to it. And, you know, Phyrexian Metamorph, even though it's hard to reprint, there are even cards like that I'm getting a little bit leery about keeping in stock. One of the cards that I have decided to sell out of right now is in black is Sidisi. This is a card that I did spec in pretty highly on, and Toxic Deluge. Both of these I've gotten out of just because I'm just anticipating reprints for both Sidisi and Toxic Deluge, especially if there is some sort of Rakdos type deck. I think both of these play really well into like a Rakdos type theme as paying things at a cost to do an effect. I also sold out Phyrexian because even Conspiracy, it's been a miss last Commander. This is a card that consistently gets reprinted in Commander. So timing is sell, and then you buy back into the cards after a few months after the Commander sets really put a lot of supply into the market. So that's something you need to be very aware of. Of course, rotation is the other thing. You shouldn't be holding on any cards that are rotating from Kaladesh, Amonkhet, Hour Devastation, or what's the other set? We have Kaladesh block, Aether Revolt. Those are cards that are, even if they are seeing heavy play right now in Standard, you should have been getting rid of them months ago. I think even now it might be a little late to get rid of cards. Even cards like, you know, Soulscar Major are holding a decent little price tag. Those are going to get crushed in a few weeks, in a few months, as rotation does come closer and closer and closer. It is a race to the bottom. It's a race to these vendors to get out of their stocks as soon as possible. All right, so as far as time is concerned on the other end, well, what is a good opportunity to buy right now? This is where I like to buy cards that are non-rotating, so from sets, and you can actually look at some rotating cards. Usually I like to look at rotating cards after rotation for specific cards, and if they see a lot of Commander play, though, a lot of those have already started to go up, and you'd be very, very surprised at some of the prices of these particular cards. When I updated prices on a lot of my inventory, I was surprised by a ton of these cards. And cards like the, let's go over to the Aetherflux Reservoir. This one was very surprising when I looked it up. This was a card that I have been targeting at 40 cents, I believe. I was picking Aetherflux Reservoirs for quite some time for 40 cents. So you can kind of see my strategy. I pick up cards about 50% of their going TCG mid rate. And so I was buying into Aetherflux Reservoirs throughout this entire time period because it was seeing a lot of play in Commander. And lo and behold, it has a nice little payoff here. Yes, people can say that it does see some play in the Ironworks combo, but you'd be surprised that it actually doesn't see a lot of play in Ironworks combo. In fact, the very first one I pulled up does not have the Aetherflux Reservoir in the 75. We'll just pick up another one here. Does it have an Aetherflux Reservoir? No, it does not. So it has seen some play. Aetherflux Reservoir is not being driven up because of the popularity of Ironworks combo. It is being driven up because if we go back over to EDH Rec and we look up a copy of the Aetherflux Reservoir, it sees an insane amount of play in that 10,000 decks already from Kaladesh. That is very, very high. You can check this. What you do is you want to compare the most played card from a set versus, you know, the run of the mill, and then see where it falls in. So you come over here to sets, go over here to Kaladesh, pull it up, and you can see the Aetherflux Reservoir is the third most played card, and it is slightly behind the Inventor's Fair and the Panharmonicon. I was able to identify this with the Inventor's Fair as well, and it also sees play in Lantern Control as well as KCI. This card is just really, really poised to have a high spike in value, and we can actually see here with Inventor's Fair, there was an opportune time to buy in on this. I was picking these up again around the 50 cent to all the way up to $1 mark, I think, even right here. And, you know, you make your money back quite quickly. I'm actually very surprised at how fast some of these cards have started to gain value. It usually took a good year, 2 years after rotation before even Commander started outstretching the supply. But absolutely nowadays, it seems like the Commander really is the format to invest in as the draft seasons throw these a lot of, you'll have the original price for people that want these in Commander decks, and then they'll start to lose value in their standard season, and that's the time to pick them up. So I guess the whole point of this a Market Monday is to identify the right buying opportunities at the moment. Like I said, the cards that I am selling out of right now are a lot of the more Commander staples, from anywhere from Eldritch Moon back to Concertar Care, Theros even. Anything from Theros to Eldritch Moon is too much of a liability if it hasn't seen a reprint recently, and those are the cards I'm selling. What I'm buying, I am targeting right now mainly Dominaria, Ixalan, and Rivals of Ixalan because, again, these Inventors Fairs and Aethervox Reservoirs, cards that are still in Standard, seem to be actually going up before rotation now. So you have to adjust. These used to be cards that you buy after rotation. However, unfortunately, it looks like the time period to buy these is after, how many sets? 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 sets down the road after it's released. So it gets a good 2 years after it's in circulation of Standard is probably where you want to start to buy these cards if they're low, as they'll start to outstretch. So yeah, the 2-year mark is probably pretty fair with these Commander type cards. So you probably have some time with Hour of Devastation. The best way to do that, come over here to sets. We pull up the Hour of Devastation. We'll pull up some of these right here and pull up Amonkhet and Hour of Devastation. And again, look at cards that maybe just be undervalued in comparison to other cards that have gone on. Now, I know Procession does have a lot of casual appeal, but you can see the card like Pull from Tomorrow, another card I have been picking up. And this might have some price discrepancy from Card Kingdom. Card Kingdom does seem to be a trendsetter, though. So Pull from Tomorrow, if you can pick up any cheap copies of Pull from Tomorrow, it still seems like it's stagnated. So I'm pretty sure you can still find, it says lowest price is 80 cents on TCG. You can probably still find deals. Local game stores bulk bins at that point might just throw them in, because there's a lot of game stores where they're not interested in selling a $1 card. And same thing with other online dealers. You can find these at a higher price if you buy them in large quantities, just because, selling a $1 card over eBay or TCG Player is a losing effort, as you end up paying more in the fees than you do on the profit margin of gained. So Pull for Tomorrow seems like a pretty good spec, and this is just kind of my routine when looking for cards. 4,496 decks compared to Anointed Processions, which is just a shoe-in in a lot of white decks. That means that Pull for Tomorrow sees a lot of play. It has actually been one of the better draw spells in a while. I think personally it's just strictly better than Blue Sun Zenith. It costs 1 less mana. Yes, you do have to discard a card, but at that point you're going to get, if you spend a lot of mana into it, you're going to get a redundant card you don't want anyway. Or a lot of times Blue Sun Zenith, you end up discarding excess cards if you main phase it trying to find a specific card. So Pull from Tomorrow is a very, very powerful card, and of course it's going to reflect that as its price tag goes up. These Scatter Grows type cards do seem to be received well in Commander. It's definitely something that I think is investable post-rotation. The thing about these cards is a lot of supply will be injected into the market, just because these do see play in Standard. So those type of cards that do see play in Standard, it's not the right time to invest in. You can always go rotation to get those cards. Irrigated Farmlands, again, might just be uninvestable for a long period of time because it's in a challenger deck, but you can definitely invest in some of these other cards. These will take a little bit of work to get there. Here's another interesting one, is Cascading Cataracts. This was a card that I found in bulk bins for long periods of time. It was a card that saw no movement, but right now it does see some play in a lot of the 3, 4, 5 color decks in Commander. I wonder what this is about. I wonder if a lot of these cards you see a little bit of a tick down. I wonder if the inventory is just being updated on TCG Player, if they lost Crystal Commerce. Sometimes this can be very misleading. You'll see across the board a lot of prices dipping, and this is just something going offline. So don't be too worried about these type of little bumps. So Cascading Cataracts, again, started seeing increase around Dominaria. We can even come over here with EDH Rex and see exactly where is seeing play. And lo and behold, yep, it was in the Dragon decks and Ramos Dragon Engine, Scion the Dragon, Sliver Overlord, Lord, Child of Alara. Probably might see a little bit of a bump from, it looks like new cards that synergize with it is the Warrior. This Warrior deck, is seeing play with the Commander card. Where's the synergies that the deck that goes into? It's going to be the 5-color Warrior out of Battle Bond that this is seeing synergy with the Cascading Cataract. So I guess we come over here to naturally the Blade Blossom, which will continue to get lists. This seems like the most popular commander out of Battle Bond. So we haven't even seen the price increase for some of these cards hitting their peak before they start to level back off. So man, Brutal Horde Chief might actually be a good little spec these days, or Druid's Repository. But if we go down to lands, we probably see a lot of Cascading Cataracts, being played in 40% of all of these decks wanting a Cascading Cataracts. And of course, the price does reflect that it is seeing play. I know a lot of land destruction, even mono white decks do run this because they run like Armageddons, and Cascading Cataracts survive. So it's a pretty reasonable investment to start picking these up, as they have nowhere to go but up. Like, the thing about Modern is decks come and go, trends come and go. The only thing that pushes out a card out of Commanders if not just one, but a multitude of better options happen. And Commander also has the ability that there are budget players. It seems like in Modern that no one plays the second best card. Like, you don't play a Duress over an Inquisition because you can't afford the Inquisitions. You just don't play the deck at that point. It seems like Modern players, they play the deck. They don't play these half-assed versions of the deck. However, Commander, there's all sorts of scope of people that have their little points of where they'll put a card in their deck. Mine was $30 for quite some time. I didn't want to put a card over $30 in a casual deck. So if I saw a card that would go in a deck, nope, not gonna splurge on it unless I already have it. I'll throw it in a deck, but I'm not going to buy a card specifically for my Commander if it's over $30. That was my threshold. Again, competitive players, the sky's the limit of what they're willing to purchase. If they really are serious about a format, they're not going to skimp on a card. Commander players, they absolutely will. So it actually does allow second best cards, third best, fourth best ability to actually go up in value because people are just not willing to get the expensive card, and they'll just play the next best card for that slot. And so that's what I like about Commander. These cards are a lot more safe, a lot more stable, and their trajectories usually do look like this. And this is actually quite a bit of gain in a short period of time. This is a double up from here to here. Usually Commander cards had a slow increase for years and years and years, and then they just catch you out of left field that these cards were actually worth money. So it really shows me that there's a ton of movement in the Commander market. So anyway, let's go back over here to the Amonkhet. You can even see that as foretold, this is something that does see play in Modern, so it's kind of anchored to that price. But here's another good one. The Vizier the Menagerie sees quite a bit of play, half as much play as an Procession. If you've ever played this card in Commander, it's quite good. You have cards like Oracle Muldai and Courser of Krufix that you can look at about similar effects. Yes, playing a land off the top of your library is probably superior, but playing a creature off the library is pretty good. A deck like Animar, of course, will want this particular deck. You can actually see that Animar is the driving force behind Vizier. The reprint of the 25 probably made a lot of people want to build Animar. Animar can actually be built at quite budget, and this is a good budget option for those budget decks to be able to have card advantage. You can see even decks like Samut or Rashmi, Momor Vig, Karametra. Doesn't look like a lot of older cards have really picked it up, but maybe cards that come out, like a new commander out of Dominaria comes out, oh, Vizier the Menagerie could go in that. It could actually even go in Arcades the Strategist. It's not a bad card with another draw outlet to be able to cast things off the top of your library to assemble those type of creatures. So that's when analyzing like a card, where it will go. That's usually what you want to do. Doesn't see any play in Standard, except for my decks. I love Vizier the Menagerie. It's a pet card. Go check out my Ronus's Monument Stomp deck. Hopefully you'll be impressed with the power level of this card. But anyway, this is a good way to find those hidden gems. So Card Kingdom seems to be, they'll move their prices up faster than TCG Player. A lot of times it'll be a lot more expensive than cards like Throne of the God-Pharaoh, I'm sure, is a bulk card. I might be wrong here. It seems to be ticking up too. I'm surprised by this card. It's another one that just rotted in bulk bins forever. Legendary made it really, really weird in decks, competitive decks for Standard. But you can see that Harvest Season, for example, sees almost the exact same amount of play as Throne of the God-Pharaoh. It's actually a pretty decent deck. A lot of token decks came out of Dominaria for, I wonder if that's bringing it up. So we have Hepatra and we have Wart. Omnath. So it actually was Hepatra a little bit in the same time period. I'm surprised these Dominaria decks. Yep, okay, so a few of these Dominaria decks are starting to tick up the demand for the Harvest Season. And so it's just a matter of time before enough Commander decks will actually want this. It's got a reasonably powerful effect. Search your library for X basic land cards with X number of tapped creatures you control and put those cards on the battlefield. So it's a very fast way to ramp up in a more casual format where your creatures aren't liabilities, especially they're kind of weaker creatures. They're not going to get targeted, and so their Harvest Season. Even if you cast this for just 2, creatures, that's pretty reasonable for Harvest Season. So again, evaluating Commander cards is a whole different ball game than Modern. Modern, you have to worry about what I even want to call the Spell Queller effect. Or in my opinion, what the spec that I was really terrible, which I don't think is a bad call with information I had, was Tidebinder Mage. I spec'd a really heavily in Tidebinder Mage after M15 rotation, as currently it was seeing 4-ofs in Merfolk decks. And then, lo and behold, Origins came out and printed Harbinger of Tides. And then Tidebinder Mage got another reprint. But at the time being, Tidebinder seemed like a good effect because it was the best one at the time. Modern, yeah, you get outclassed by a card that's just slightly better, that card goes completely down in value. So when analyzing a card, it definitely needs to have its place and be an there's no way that you unreplaceable type card to really be an investable target. Commander, not so much. A card like Harvest Season that can go in enough decks, this is a card that probably will go up from its 25-cent value. Is it seeing any sort of movement with Harvest Season? Come over here. If it does, to me, that's promising. Yes, that looks pretty flat, but that does seem promising that this particular card is going up in value. Card Kingdom is actually paying 10 cents for it. They have it for 25 cents, means they're overstocked with it. But give a few months, that could easily change, as you saw with cards like Inventor's Fair and whatnot. So you can just go down this list, look at a bunch of cards. The monuments are cards you should be taking out of bulk bins, for example, because they're heavily played in Commander. And a lot of these cards will surprise you about how much they actually do see Commander play. Usually I tend to focus on the cards that have a good ratio towards the card being played. So, of course, 6,000 is a benchmark for Amonkhet. So anything that has reasonable of 20% or not, yeah, about 30%, I would say, to 50% is a card that's going to go up value within the next few months, years, to a reasonable rate. All right, so we can check over here to other sets like the Hour of Devastation, and there are still some good opportunities. The Ramadec Excavator, I think, is going to end up outstretching the amount of promos out there. It seems like Torment of Hailfire is still a good pick. Mirage Mirrors, these are cards that I'm heavily been targeting. Razaketh, I can't even keep this card in stock to save my life. And even after rotation, when decks start to dump Scavenger Grounds, it seems promising enough to invest in these. Hour of Revelation has been my big investment. I've been finding a seller and TCG player that's been selling these for me at 20 cents forever. And Hour of Revelation, if we come over here and look at the price tag, Hour of Revelation, you can see that the price has even continued to go down, but according to EDHREC, it sees a pretty decent amount. Again, we're above that threshold, above being even above 50% of the benchmark of Ramadec Excavator, so there is reasonable demand for this card. Even cards like Nahab have been ticking up, sees more play than Locust God, which the Locust God's driving force has been casual to actually make this card go back up. So Locust God, people thought was competitive, and it did hit its bottom mark, because it's actually been starting to tick back up again from its low of $5.80. It does see play every now and again like Vintage, but that is not going to be enough to drive the price up of particular cards. So this particular set, I've been targeting Hour of Revelation, Hour of Promise. Hour of Promise actually might get a huge bump anyway, because it had good coverage time for some of these ramp decks that played over the weekend. It might actually even get better with Scape Shift and other type decks for a utility land-based deck. Swarm Intelligence is another sleeper, in my opinion. This is a card that's going to go up in value. Blue decks love it. Many blue decks play it in. Another thing you can do, this is another tip, if it sees play in Atraxa or Brea or whatnot, it can be a little misleading of how popular a card is, because there are just so many Brea decks out there and Atraxa decks out there and Marin decks out there that if it sees play in those type of decks, it will look like it sees like a lot more play in Commander than it really does, where, you know, people have multiple Commander decks. Once they build their Atraxa deck, they're going to build something else. So I like these type of cards where no particular deck is dominating as far as where it's seeing play. It's seeing play in just a variety of different blue Commander decks. Of course, Narset getting the edge here, because I'm pretty sure it is absolutely busted with Narset. And you can see that, yeah, this card will probably start to go up in value. Especially, it seems to be a theme with, there was even a new deck out of, or Joda. Joda, like even Swarm Intelligence can pair pretty well with Joda out of Dominaria, as it can allow you to cast those big instant sorceries for 5 and then copy them. So you can see that this is a very versatile card that can go in a number of decks and should start to have the price trajectory to go up. We'll look at it up just to see. Seems pretty flat to me. You can see a slight increase of trajectory since Explorers of Ixalan here. So that is a good sign for Swarm Intelligence. Even though it's very slow, these things do start to tick up. So if it gets a couple pennies a day, pretty soon it's 30 cents a month. A year, it can go up as much as $3.65 if it's a penny a day. So those are the cards that I do like to invest in. No one's really got their eye on it. And that's the name of the game with Magic Finance at the moment, is you need to find an area where everyone isn't so hyper focused on, like like Stoneforge Mystic unbannings and things like that. So that's where the real bread and butter, the real stability of MTG Finance or Magic Collection is going to come. All right, so last but not least, though, this is what I am talking about here, because we're in a new era of Magic where it didn't hold true. It used to be that a set was drafted, and then it was drafted again with the set that came out after it, and then it was drafted one more time with the set that came out after that. So, and they had different ways of doing that. It used to be the first set of a block would come out, you draft it 3-0, and then the next set of the block would come out and you draft it 2-1, and the next set would come out and you draft 1-1-1. So the first set always got drafted like crazy. There was always a lot more supply of that set than anything else. And there was a real big pattern of what cards would be worth a lot more, or just the supply of certain cards, and it make cards like Eidolon of the Great Revel go up more than they probably should be. Like an Eidolon, if it would have been in, let's just pick up Eidolon while I'm talking here. If this would have been in Theros, it probably would have been half the value of the. So let's look at just the trajectory of Journey to Nyx. Since it was included in Journey to Nyx, it was able to gain that traction after rotation quite quickly, up to the $12 mark, as it does see play heavily in Burn. However, if this was in Theros, it probably would have been very similar, like a Courser of Crewfix. Probably would have never been able to go up to the $12 mark. So supply means a lot in Magic the Gathering. So that used to be the old, where you drafted a set, then drafted again with another set, then maybe drafted again with another set. You look at like the Return to Ravnica block, as you went 3 Return to Ravnica. Then it didn't get drafted with Gatecrash, but then it did get drafted again with Dragon's Maze. Then you look at like the Khans of Tarkir. Khans got drafted as a 3-0, then as a was it a 1-2? No, it got drafted with, no, Fate got drafted twice, I believe. No, Dragons was a standalone, I thought, as a draft. Anyway, a lot of times there was a lot of overlap. You draft it more than once, and those prices were harder to recover from sets like that. However, and you couldn't like invest in, let's take the Theros example. You couldn't go after it's being 3-0 drafted like crazy. You can't say, okay, it's out of its draft season, we have a new set come out, we can now invest in it, because no, it's still bad because it's still being opened. So now we have this opportunity with Dominaria. Dominaria is like this first standalone set. It seems to be, even they've announced that the Return to Ravnica are all going to be their own one block sets. There's going to be 5 of them in a row. That they're not going to be, I mean, this is what they're saying right now, they're all going to be large sets. They're not going to draft Return to Ravnica or the Ravnica block, or it's not going to be blocks. It's not, they're going to be one set formats. And so this gives like a new way to invest in like Dominaria. Dominaria is going to be really soon off the drafting table for M19. And that's actually a shorter of a time period than a lot of sets like Ixalan stays on till, all the way from September all the way to, or early November to all the way to, February? That's a long block period of time. Whereas some of these summer sets have a quick, short time, and we had Battle Bond thrown in the mix there. The Dominaria actually might be, even though it was open like crazy, might be something that will have some prices go up very, very quickly. And so again, a good way to do this is actually, you can try to play the game of trying to figure out decks that are going to be good post-rotation, but that is even hard for the pros to do. Pros in the past have predicted, hey, once this rotates out, this deck's going to actually overcome it, and it's going to be a good archetype. A lot of times that's not true. Another card comes out that just outclasses that, and it may be a spec in the, like me, I spec'd into Underworld Cerberus because I thought a 5-mana 6/6 was really well positioned once a few cards rotated out. And then it ends up, oh, well, there's this other strategy that just doesn't care about 5-drops, doesn't care about playing the mid-range, or a card that has to die to get its effect is pretty bad with a bunch of exile spells that come out. So rather than trying to play the meta game in finance of what the rotating cards are going to be, I like to look at commander cards. So you come over here to the Dominaria, for example, and you start to see a lot of trends happening of what cards are popular and what cards are, well, you have to really scroll down for commanders. Yep, this set had a bazillion of them. What cards may not be as popular as some people think. So, of course, right off the bat, you see Helm of the Host and Grow from the Ashes. Well, Blackblade Reforged was a bulk rare for quite some time. Card Kingdom has already ticked it back up to $1.50. Maybe Chalet actually is a lot more investable at $3 if it sees this much play in commanders. Tatvoya, don't be throwing those in bulk bins. This could be in a common that could go up, and so on and so forth. As far as bulk rare prices, the mending of Dominaria is very, very promising. It seems like the lands matter, especially land recursion type themes, is something that happens a lot in these future commanders. Cards like Omnoth, decks like Omnoth, or decks like the Gitrog Monster still are some of the most popular decks played in Commander, and both on a competitive and on a casual level. So the mending of Dominaria, which just strictly goes in those type of cards, eventually is going to be outstretched and going to start to hold some value. Still, though, Dominaria is weird because of just how much the set was open. And when you have a mythic that does 2 mythics that hold $40 price tags for this long, box openers continue to just open, and it drives the prices down of these other cards. So this is a set that you definitely should keep your eye on, and I think that the time to get in on these low on some of these commander staples is going to be in the next few months. So again, you have time to invest in them. This isn't like something that it's like, oh, I better invest in these before it goes up. Usually you have a good 6-month window, but you should be looking at that not at the last hour, not the 11th hour for that 6-month window. You should be looking at that right now. You should be putting these on your buy list. You should be actively trading for these particularly hot cards in Commander. One of the sets you definitely should be looking at, as I've already proven, we were having Kaladesh and Aether Revolt, and those already start to go up, is going to be Rivals of Ixalan. This set was not opened near on the levels of other sets it's almost Our Devastation laughable is what I've been hearing. There's just not a lot of supply of these cards out there because no one wanted it. There never was cards in this set that held any particular value to really attract people to buy into it. So, I think you can see that with the price of Galta. Galta does see some play, but it definitely shouldn't be a $9 card in Standard if this set was actually opened enough to justify a $9 price tag. So if you come back down here again, we have cards like Atali that are ticking up, Wayward Swordtooth that are ticking up, Journey to Eternity, Immortal Sun, even Nezahal. These cards, Arch of Araska, this was another card that was, Card Kingdom had it at 99 cents not too long ago. If you come over here with Arch of Araska, this is just an easy card to throw in a lot of decks. Yep, it's already starting to tick up. Already starting to see that tick from the casual play. It does see some competitive play again. You never know if this is actually going to be a big strategy post-rotation. So again, this is a smart card to really start to get in on. And World Shaper again. Oh, they've actually bumped this up. This was a bulk rare price last time I looked at it. 25 cents according to Card Kingdom, and now it's gone up in value. Maybe it's time to start sticking some money there. Now, a lot of you may say, like, MTG Finance is really focused on the more expensive cards because they're easier to move and find buyers for. But what I've been utilizing right now is this Card Kingdom isn't terrible, or buy listing or even vending at GPs isn't terrible to get your money. Even if you invest in at, say, Arch of Araska when it was at its low at 80 cents, and now it's up to $1.50, we can probably come over here to Card Kingdom and see what they're actually, buying the Arch of Araska for. Because a lot of times, even Card Kingdom is very... Let's see, 60 cents. Okay, so they're selling it for $1.50, they're buying it for 60. So, of course, that's not the right... But, again, if you bought it 80 cents, you're already up to 60 cents. And the buy list, especially when it hits that... when the demand really does outstress the supply and no one has them in stock, these can have a temporary little price spike. And places like Card Kingdom, they are very aggressive on their buy list to try to get to refill on their inventories. Here's a good example: Cyclonic Rift. they're misleading. Cyclonic Rifts actually is only going for about $10, I believe, on the rest of. I was finding these all over the place. You could buy them for, yeah. So like, look, $12.40 lowest price. That's kind of messed up. But $11.56. Look at Card Kingdom. They're actually buying the Cyclonic Rifts for $11.25 at the moment. They're paying this amount of money. So you can find a buy list that absolutely needs them and is willing to pay even TCG player price. And sometimes these will be these dollar cards that have been. I mean, what are they buying Aetherflux Reservoir for? Let's look that up really quickly and see what the spread is. $1.30. And what do we determine Aetherflux Reservoir is worth? Like $2, I guess. But again, if you got this in on bulk price, that's a pretty good payoff where you can send one big package. And this is probably going to go up again. Sometimes you can look at their let's go to their buy cards again, and you can see how many of them in stock. If they're under 8, that means they're out of stock with where they're going. But I mean, that's pretty good. 8 available, yeah. They might start to be selling out of these. I mean, they've already bumped it up to $3.50. Their buy list actually might follow suit pretty soon to even give a better spread on the Aetherflux Reservoir. So again, that is where I stand with these like commander cards, recently printed commander cards. The whole game has changed. They used to have a lot of time to invest in these, like years after rotation before Commander would outstretch the supply, but it seemed to be quicker and quicker and quicker. And that just shows that the casual is still, I mean, the pros, we're back to the pay the pro nonsense of people freaking out about the silver whatever tournament. A lot of people are just disconnected with the actual bread and butter of Magic. The actual mass players are more on this casual level. Yes, pros matter. Modern prices, of course, go up when a deck spikes or wins a pro tour and stuff like that. But I think that not looking at commander cards is a mistake, and it's easy money rather than trying to play the game of what cards are going to be good at any given time in a highly competitive format, that it can change on a dime if a card gets printed. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. I know it's a long, rambly video again. More educational than most on this video than in particular. And again, this is just my daily routine, is trying to find these little odds and ends of cards that I think are going to have a significant you have to play the timing game. You got to know when to sell, know when to buy. This has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.